Randi Jaffe, class of '74, who had said something that I thought many other people would say when asked about her favorite place on campus. It's under the magnolia tree.
I lived in a fraternity house from spring of my freshman year until a few days after graduation. How did this happen? Well, when I was a fresh person at Barnard in the fall of '70, Barnard accepted almost a third of its class as commuters. We were officially commuters. We were never really going to get a dorm room unless everybody else was housed and started moving out. And it didn't look hopeful. I didn't mind that at first because I was a pretty shy, pretty quiet girl. One of the many reasons I came to Barnard was I kind of felt I'd do better in an atmosphere where there were no men's voices in the classrooms, because I tended to shut up and just let them talk. Anyway, so everybody had, after a while, her own strategy for participating in residential life and not just coming to classes. Mine was staying over once a week in an apartment in 616. Dora Ting, if you're in here, thank you again. And it was great, and it worked really well for a while. Then one unseasonably warm day, after a sleepover, when I was really, really groggy, and really happy and carrying 2 days' worth of books and clothes and coats and sweaters, I tumbled down the stairs at Times Square, changing trains. Happily, all the good New Yorkers around me did not step on me. They picked me up and handed me to this sweet young policeman who was blushing quite orange and led me under one of those little doors in the subway. Never wondered what? Well, some of them have first aid kits inside them. And he put me in there, and I cleaned myself up and tore away my bloodied pantyhose. Yes, I wore mini skirts. Everybody else was wearing jeans. But I was commuting. I had to, look like a woman in the subway, not a kid. So a few days later, happily, a fellow commuter came to me and said, "I'm living in this fraternity house in a triple with 2 other Barnard women, and there's this room that opened up, and if I can get a roommate, we can have it." And I said, "Let's go visit." So I went over there, and happily, it was not in Fraternity Row. It was on 115th Street, all by itself. And I fell in love with the place. It was a tumble-down house, none too clean. And the guys there were nothing like what I thought of fraternities was. They were poets, they were geologists, they were mathematicians and philosophers. They were a lovely crew of guys. And so I moved in. My skinned knees really helped my parents put up with this monstrous change. The morning after we moved in, my mother has told me that my father said, "We made a big mistake." Well, it wasn't a mistake. Very quickly, our room became sort of the locus of the house conversation. We went out and we bought a great big pink shag rug and put it in our room because the rest of the house was all brown and blue, and it was depressing. And then we started making cocoa because that's what we like to do. And pretty soon, cocoa in our room at 2 a.m. was part of the daily routine at the house. There'd be cocoa and conversation until everybody drifted off. In our sophomore year, early on, some of the guys decided, well, we should just vote some of these women in as full brothers. So my name went into national, spelled R-A-N-D-Y instead of I, and my good friend Ave Maria Brennan became Brother Averill. Interestingly, we were the only 2 who were voted in of the 6 women in the house that year, and we were also the only 2 who had brothers at home. We kind of knew how to live with men as brothers, and the other women were a little shakier about it, and those who didn't have brothers tended to leave relatively quickly. Anyway, time went on. End of sophomore year, there's an election, and much to my astonishment, I'm drafted to be vice chancellor. There are 23 men and 6 women in the House, and they picked me as vice chancellor. I'd never run for anything in my life. This was a total surprise, but I said, sure, what the heck. Vice presidents don't do anything. What can vice chancellors have to do? Well, junior year rolls around, and the elected chancellor decides he doesn't want any part of the work. So I become chancellor of this house full of guys. And quickly, I evolved from just cocoa maker to chief manager of this house. So I took this, never having held office before, I took it very, very seriously, organized cleanup parties, and did things like actually get the house into black ink out of red for the first time in about 15 years. Fraternities, I should say, were at a very, very low point in the early 70s. That house used to have 30 guys living in it and another 60 outside members. So now they were taking in women originally just to pay their mortgage. But as you hear, they embraced us pretty quickly. It was really, really fun. So anyway, I get the house into the black, and we get a phone call from the president of the National, who says, "I want to meet this fine young man." So we had a conference about what to do, and we decided to send the resigned ex-chancellor instead. We said, Brother Randi has a big exam this week and can't make it. But that was, the middle of the year. By spring, I served on the Intrafraternity Council, the Columbia Fraternity Council. I was the only woman there. Boy, were they mystified. But, it sort of, things got better as the year went on. I gained confidence, and late in the spring, when we heard there was going to be the biennial big shindig national gathering, I said, it's time they knew it was a woman. And I decided to go. So I get up to the granite in the Catskills, where this thing is, and end up rooming with the Southern Belle secretary of the president, because they didn't know what else to do with me, and that was a trip. But so and we discovered on the first night that there was one other rogue chapter at RPI that had accepted women. They brought along a very sweet 18-year-old fresh person who was willing to be stood on a table and sung to by her brothers. This did not seem to me like progress. But so I was even more careful to spend my time the next few days politicking. Politicking for what? Columbia and RPI co-sponsored a co-ed amendment to the National Fraternity Constitution. We thought there was no chance on earth it would go through, but okay, we're going to fight this good fight. So I spent all my time politicking. How did I politic with these guys? I talked about fraternity business with them. I talked about them like, we were brothers. And I did that with the elders, and I did that with the young men, and I took almost no time to myself. Finally, the day before the final voting, I said, I need to get into a swimming pool. So I put on my modest up-to-the-neck bathing suit and go out to the pool. And the wives of the elders beckon me over to their lounge chairs and say, what are you doing? What is this about? Why would you want to have anything to do with this? And I try to explain. And the only line I remember is Kitty Jacobs looking at me from her sexy black bathing suit saying, I just don't understand why you want to be my husband's brother. I knew this was pretty funny, but it was really disturbing. Her husband was the most forward-thinking of the elders there. Anyway, the next morning, the vote happened, and the co-ed amendment only lost by 1/3 of one vote. That meant that 2/3 of the guys in the room were with us. So I took that actually as a personal victory. So that evening for the formal dinner, I put on a fluffy, beautiful gown, and I put up my hair, and I even found my mascara and put that on, and marched into the formal dinner. And as I marched in, 3 of the elders came and circled me and did this little ceremony they'd made up just for me and pinned me with the same pin that they all wore. It was a totally overwhelming moment. And so in that moment, I felt like what had happened was I had not just grown up and become a woman, I had also become a person. Thank you.